Good afternoon, guys. So, as many of you know, I took a break from alerting options over the last 2 days. Came back today. Today's Friday. Reason why is we had 6 mornings in a row. Well, I took the break after 5, but 6 mornings in a row that while I was profitable 4 out of the 6, I believe, and break even another one. So, really, 3 out of the 6 I was profitable. Uh, The opening chop was terrible, resulting in terrible win rate. Difficulty in alerting fast enough because my sentiment kept changing. Um, Very difficult to alert over the last week and a half, or 2 weeks, I should say. So I took a break, and yesterday the market was better. Still got hornswoggled out of a trade yesterday morning. I didn't do an options review on that, but still went 3-1 yesterday morning. So it was a solid green day. And much like today, the first trade I took yesterday, the hypothesis ended up being correct, but it swept my stop loss. Stream doesn't load, had to connect. Let me close my screen share real quick and try to reconnect it. There you go. You guys should be able to see it. And for the recording, now today is a new day. Yesterday was better. I was kind of hoping that once CPI happens, the mornings will start being probable again and predictable. And it has been. So here's my pre-market analysis. Well, if you hop over to like the daily chart on NQ, you will see that, well, you kind of spoil it, but you'll see that we pretty much got to all-time highs. We're very close. Now, we are in heavy supply, but the supply is pretty used up. And because of my liquidity momentum theories, if it invalidates the majority of the move, price action is likely to chase the nearest pivot, as it usually does. So I'm bullish for NQ all-time highs. ES, on the other hand, is a little bit different. ES is clearly weaker than the NASDAQ. And let me go to the 30-minute. ES is clearly weaker than the NASDAQ. But even ES is putting in bullish consolidation. This is actually a descending broadening wedge here. But this is bullish consolidatory price action. And we are rejecting supply. But what do I see out of this rejection? Well, I see an inverse head and shoulders, as you can see. So even though my sentiment for this morning is bullish for all-time highs on NQ, I am even hoping that we pull back out of open to put in this right shoulder for this rejection. By the way, it looks like TradingView got an update. Every time I click a chart, this stupid little buy order shows up. Really annoying. So if you see me keep look, see, I can't escape it. But anyways, that's my sentiment. And I'm hoping for a pullback at market open because if we shoot up at market open, the risk short's probably going to be too terrible for me to actually get into the trade. So that's what I'm looking for at market open. Here's the 1-minute chart, and let's just play this day and see what actually happened. First candle market open was super bullish on NQ, but you guys know my rule. Typically, I try to wait to only place a trade, to enter a trade only within the last 10 seconds of the candle. Same goes for options trading and futures trading alike. Last 10 seconds only. That's when I can get in. So I was thinking about, okay, well, I can get in right here. And the risk reward still makes sense. I'm going to go half size, though, because lately market open trades have not been going statistically well, and they have a lot of chop and so on and so forth. So that's what I was looking at. Interestingly, though, that did not really happen. NQ kind of flipped weak. It dumped, but then put in a huge buying wick. And I need to sneeze, but it's not coming, so I'm fighting for my life right now. But ES looked like it started flipping strong. NQ got a red candle, ES got a green candle. So I'm waiting for ES to get to roughly here. If we can get to here, I have a decent pivot on ES here. Now, if it breaks this high, it's probably going to break this entire cluster. So my PT is actually here, but this is what I'm looking at. And this would likely be a half-size trade due to heavy supply. We also have news today at 7 o'clock my time, so 30 minutes after market open. And look how strong ES is. Now, NQ got all the way down here. It's sweeping buy-side liquidity in heavy demand, and ES is stronger. But we do have this pivot down here on ES as well. Well, as we start falling, I start considering puts. I can't enter right now. But if ES can put in a head and shoulders, and we can invalidate, or sorry, we can bounce and then start invalidating the right shoulder, puts to here would be great. That's what I'm looking at the moment. It is a decent probability trade, but we bounce back and we actually start bouncing kind of hard. This was a bullish liquidity sweep on NQ plus demand. They're roughly even strength. I think ES is a little bit stronger at the moment. And now you see NQ is a lot stronger. Now, in order for me to get in, I'm looking to enter. Here are my call entries. Roughly up here on NQ. And roughly here on ES. Whichever one's stronger. ES starts falling. Now, this is tricky because I am bearish for ES to get this pivot. This candle's kind of covered up by demand. But we did miss this pivot down here, not by a teeny tiny amount. If we only missed it by like a tick, or if it's perfect double bottom, that would have overridden all my bullish bias. So I'm bearish for ES to get down here, but at this moment on NQ, these charts are nearly doing the opposite thing, and NQ's invalidated most of this drop. Or almost most of this drop. I'm starting to be bullish for high day again. So this is very conflicting bias-wise, and this causes me to just kind of sit on my hands and wait. Well, ES starts bouncing, and right when ES starts bouncing, for some reason, that's when NQ did. Look at this. Right when ES starts bouncing, that's when NQ pulls back. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Because I thought NQ was going to be stronger. Guess not. NQ retest demand. Still technically able to get into that ES trade if it's a lot stronger. That's a nice candle out of demand. That's very bullish. Did not stay that way, though. And it was on, not this candle, this candle that I enter calls. Now, I personally enter on SPX. I enter a little bit more than halfway up the candle, right? It shot up a lot in the last about 10 seconds. I entered roughly there. Now, I did enter half size. It's heavy supply, but here's the issue. We have news in 5 minutes. So we have news in 5 minutes. I don't go light half size because news makes the trades less likely to play out. Statistically speaking, when I backtest, I don't take into account news at all, and my stats are fine. But I drop my size in preparation for news to avoid a mind freeze experience. In order to trade profitably, before every trade, you make a mental contract with yourself, determining and agreeing with the amount of money you're willing to spend. Keyword is spend. The amount of money that you're willing to spend to find out if this trade is going to be a green one. So if I'm okay taking a $500 loss, that means I'm willing to spend $500 to find out if this trade's going to be green. That's the mindset you have to have as a trader. Well, with the news, all of a sudden it can be minus 1,500 or whatever it is. It depends on your sizing. And that's a size you did not accept. And all of a sudden your expectations are suddenly outside of the reality of the environment that you're operating in, and your mind simply cannot process that and it shuts down. That's why when you take a loss so big and so unexpected, you just freeze up and you can't stop out. Or if you do stop out, you stop out once the pain of losing one more dollar exceeds the pain of being wrong, and that's Mark Douglas for you. And you stop out, but oftentimes by then your psychology is already fried, and you reverse your trade to try to make your money back. So I lighten up my size before news. Had to do it this time, and so this is my first trade. SPX calls here. Didn't enter QQQ. We got to PT, but then we came back. So I trimmed fairly heavy at PT. Keep in mind it was only a half size trade, right? So I trimmed most at this first price target, but I had a decent amount left. And by most, I trimmed roughly half the trade. I think it was like one contract more than half of the position size. So I got 30% gains there. But I said, if we come back up and invalidate this drop, I will re-add calls. whether it's QQQ or ES. And the reason why is because if we start pulling back here and validate this pullback, that's going to look like a fairly fractal cup and handle. But regardless, a cup and handle, and I am going to be very bullish for this bias to play out. Well, we beautifully almost swept the man on NQ. This was a really nice buying wick. I decided to hop into QQQ instead of re-adding to SPX if this drop invalidates. NQ is stronger at the moment. So I decided to take QQQ calls light size, which is a little less than half my normal size, if this red body invalidates. Because that's decent enough for me. I'm really bullish for all-time highs. And it happens on this candle. Or I thought it was this candle. 703 is when I entered. Not yet. Not yet. Right at the end of this candle, going into the next candle. Right when this next candle opened green, that's when I filled roughly here. I was light size on QQQ, and my stop loss was, where was my stop loss? It was roughly in this area. Yeah, roughly in this area. And it started green, worked out okay. But ES flipped a lot stronger than NQ. I sold all of it besides a single runner contract on SPX, and I was still in my entire QQQ position. I did not trim, unfortunately, as NASDAQ did not move, but I'm still light in QQQ and have a small runner left. I still only got 30% gains here. I entered this at 2.95, got 3.9 multiple times, even touched 4.0, but didn't go higher than that because the contract started chopping. But this was concerning. NQ was super weak, and it did end up falling. And unfortunately, I had to stop out. I actually stopped out on the next candle right when the next candle opened red. Sold for minus 32%. Now, granted, it was a light-sized position. And at this point, I'm pretty much break even on the day. I might have been... I don't remember if I was... I don't remember if I was slightly red or break even. It doesn't matter. I was pretty much break even on the day. You know, I had a nice win on SPX. My SPX trade was bigger than this QQQ one. But this last SPX contract did eat into my winnings a little bit. And then this QQQ loss pretty much invalidated them, even though it was light size, lighter than half size. Which is unfortunate. But, you know, on this candle, it was right when this candle opened, I sold. Well, now you got to understand that ES, it had a bearish liquidity sweep coming out of supply and invalidated majority of the move. I'm technically bearish for this low right now. Now, I wanted to get triggered in, and I was going to allow myself to get triggered into puts if this bounce invalidates. Now, you guys know me, I'm unwilling to just short in demand. Unless if this were a perfect double bottom, I would have just entered here half size and added on the bounce. Why do I expect a bounce? Well, it's not that I expect it, but I think it has a decent chance of happening because of the head and shoulders here. Right? It makes sense. So even if it is bearish, there's still a temporary bullish scenario that this can play out. Is the way I always think. So I'm waiting for this to invalidate, and then I'll hop in. And you got to be kidding me. Perfectly swept my stop loss. I had a great plan that if that drop invalidated, I would be back in calls, or sorry, not back in, but I would re-add. I'd bring my positions back to full size, or to full size for the first time. Well, unfortunately, it did perfectly sweep my stop loss, and there's nothing you can do. You know, a lot of analysts, you'll never see their stop losses swept because they never stop out until they are 100% sure in their minds that the trade's not going to work. And that means they like to average down a bunch. They like to cheat their stats. They don't like to accept losers. They care about their win rate a lot, which prevents people from being profitable. And something I used to do for a couple of years, actually. And when they lose really big. Not me, though. I don't give a shit. As long as I'm green, I don't care what my win rate is. All I care about is, did I execute my edge flawlessly? And what's my end result after 20 or so trades? That's what I care about. Just like a casino. A casino doesn't give a shit if I get lucky and win 10 grand on roulette. They care about their quarterly statements. Okay, how'd the casino do after thousands and thousands of roulette spins? How up are they? What are the stats looking like? Stats are looking good. Keep going. That's how you're supposed to operate as a profitable trader. But as you guys know, I have to re-enter. And that's pretty much what I did. It wasn't, I don't believe it was here. Right when this candle opened green and started invalidating the selling wick, I filled here. Now, NQ is much stronger than ES. Much stronger than ES. And I was heavy on this trade. All right. That was full size right from the gate. So much heavier on this trade. I was pretty much break even on the day, slightly right even. But I'm much heavier on this trade now. I'm fully confirmed in. If I lose, that is very unfortunate because this is a very, very, very good trade. Got right there. I sold most for 30% gains, but I kept a runner position in. I sold that runner for 60-ish% gains. I believe I sold it for, well, it got to 60. It got to like 70% gains. I think I sold it for 55 after I pulled back or something, right? So not a huge trade there. But decent green on the day. You know, I'm green by one big trade. My average win on this trade was about 40%, I'd say. And I did close it once it did not this. Not this. That. I closed it once it did that. The very last contract. Of course, I was scaling out above this, but the very last one, runner, sold right there, done. And then I went on to trade futures. If you held it, well, it did pretty well. I mean, it cleared well over 150. It cleared 150%-ish, like 140% if you held. But I was pretty happy with today. You know, perfect psychology. It sucks that my stop loss got swept on this one. Today would have been much more green if that didn't happen, right? The SPX trade would have been held, and which I don't even know if it would have made more because it chopped a ton here because it was so weak. But I wouldn't have taken a loss on that QQQ trade just to re-enter. But regardless, good trading, good analysis. I only had one bias for the day, and it pretty much played out, or one big hypothesis. And then futures was fairly boring. I avoided 3 losing trades, and I took my one and only futures trade 15 minutes after I started my futures session, and that was it. So green day on options, green day on futures. I can't complain. Not super green, like I said, but every rule is followed, and yeah, just clean trading. But with that being said, do you guys have any questions on any of the analysis or trades that I took from this morning? And keep in mind, this is recorded. Getting back in the habit of recording the options and whatnot. No, everyone's good? All right, sweet. Well, I will see you guys in roughly an hour for my futures review, and we got some stuff to work out regarding the strategy, so we will be doing that. But all right, I will ping you guys when this video is processing, which will be here in a couple of minutes. And if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I will see you guys soon for future stuff.